So we're going to get started.
That makes sense.
Meeting will come to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome everyone to tonight's planning board meeting. Please be aware of the fire exit, which is to your left of this room. In the event of an emergency, please move in a calm and orderly fashion down the stairs, and please do not use the elevator. The meetings are recorded by the secretary for the purposes of a record and minutes, so please identify yourself each time you come to the podium and speak into the microphone. The board will follow the items in the order that they appear on the agenda, extra copies of which are near the door. After the case has been called, the applicant or their representative shall come to the podium, identify him or herself, give his or her address, and then present their case. The planning board members will then have an opportunity to question the applicant. If this case is a public hearing, it will be open for public input, at which time anyone wishing to speak to the board regarding this application will come to the podium, identify themselves along with their address, and direct any questions to the board. Once all public input has been completed, the applicant or site representative will be given the opportunity to respond to any public input. Once all public input has been completed and all questions have been satisfied, the case will be closed to public input, and the board will then move on to a decision. No further input will be allowed at that point. Michelle, if you will, introduce our first case.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First item on the agenda is case number PZB 1512-1. Upon the matter of request by Nixon Peabody LLP, acting as agent for Bell Atlantic Mobile of Rochester LP, doing business as Verizon Wireless, for preliminary final site plan approval to construct and operate a self-supporting cell tower, lightning rod, and whip antenna on an equipment platform with site-related improvements on premises 4657 Culver Road, the Seabreeze Volunteer Fire Association, in a C business district.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Tom Greiner, I'm an attorney with Nixon Peabody, here on behalf of Verizon Wireless. And with me tonight are Peter Franz, who's an RF engineer at Verizon employee, and is responsible for Verizon's network in this area from a radio frequency perspective and network deployment. And next to him is Robin Cabe, who is with Pyramid Network Services, who is here tonight as Verizon's site acquisition consultant, helped Verizon actually with the identification of the site from a real estate point of view. I know the board has our application. I won't go into everything in it. However, what I would like to start with is just a brief explanation of Verizon's need for what they call the Seabreeze site, cell site. If you want to get into like an in-depth on the radio frequency or RF needs, constraints, objectives, we have Peter Franz here to answer that. Any question that's in depth, but I'll start with it. The board has at Exhibit G in a sense, the RF report. It's in 3 parts and basically goes over the system, how Verizon operates. It talks about the constraints in putting together a wireless network. Goes into, in specific, what it calls the Seabreeze cell site, and the search area or search ring that is within that site, within which Verizon would place a site. Goes into the investigation of alternatives and why the Volunteer Fire Association property at 4657 Culver Road was chosen, why it's the best site for Verizon. If you look just conceptually at cell sites, they go by location and height above sea level. That the 2 principal building blocks of a particular cell site. So it would be the longitude and latitude, getting to a point, and then getting to a certain height, getting the antennas up to a certain height so that they can actually perform the way Verizon would hope they would. And they're there to solve a problem. In this particular case, as the report goes into, the problem is up in that area. There are capacity issues. In other words, there are surrounding sites that are having problems fulfilling their function, many of which are in the town of Arundecoit, and most of which I've worked on going back many years. And in addition to the capacity issue, there's also a frequency coverage issue. In other words, Verizon's operating on several frequencies, and they're intended to be seamless. They're intended to deal with the explosion of need, data and voice service need over the years, and some of them have coverage issues. Those are depicted in Exhibit G by what are called propagations, and they are in that reported Exhibit G. Just as a for instance, I have with me a blow-up of what propagations in the report, and on the left you see existing coverage, and you see in the white areas, that's areas that actually have signal strength that is weaker than what is needed. And on the right, if the site up at the Fire Association property is approved and built, it will propagate that kind of coverage in that area and blanket the white areas in the cell site area with signal that would be appropriate to maintain not only phone calls but also data services. And so the propagations, in a sense, show both the existing problem that there is, and then will show Verizon's proposed solution. And so Exhibit G is, in a sense, from a use and from a need point of view, is the key to the application that we submitted. Other pieces of the application address issues in the ordinance, requirements of the ordinance, but the key here is the Exhibit G report. So it demonstrates the problem that Verizon has and demonstrates the solution. And then again, following up on that is a fairly long discussion of the various sites that Verizon looked at, and either for size purposes or location, there were either RF issues, location issues, or some of the sites met the RF needs and the size of the property requirements of the ordinance, but perhaps were lower down on the hierarchy of the town's ordinance in terms of preference for cell sites, where they should be, whether they're on other structures, whether they are on municipal property, whether they are on private property. That's the way the ordinance is structured. First thing Verizon did, by the way, for this site, it looked at the Fire Association building, and that flunked the structural test. And we would have had to have put a stub tower on that building, but it was impossible due to structural reasons. The 64-foot monopole right beside the building was the next alternative. Verizon looked at the Fire Association as quasi-municipal. It looked at that. It looked at, in terms of potential landlords, it looked at trying to get, if somebody's going to benefit from the rent, it looked like a public, quasi-public organization should, all other things being equal, get the rent stream could be used for public purposes. There's also a consolidation. As the board knows, there's a T-Mobile site on top of the building there, so it's a consolidation of public utility uses, along with simply being on a property that's devoted to public utility or emergency service uses. It was a consolidation of all of that into one property. So that's really explanation. Again, I'm summarizing Exhibit G, but that's an explanation of the alternatives reviewed in Exhibit G, and also why the Fire Association property was chosen. From a site point of view, you have site plans as an exhibit, and I have a blow up here if we want to look at that. But as the board knows, in these kinds of sites, they're unmanned facilities. The only utilities they use are electric and telephone, which exist at the property, and they'll just need to pull them to the actual location of the equipment building if the project is approved by the boards. There is no water, no sewer. As the board knows, I'm sure from other applications, site visits are very infrequent. Sometimes once a month, sometimes twice a month, sometimes once every 2 months. In other respects, the facility is fairly inert. It doesn't generate a lot of the adverse impacts that other kinds of uses can generate in terms of noise, traffic, dust, debris, vibration, refuse. So it's inert in that respect. The equipment platform will be surrounded by an 8-foot fence. The pole has bollards around it. The door is alarmed to the equipment shelter, so it's a pretty secure facility as well. It's a fairly simple build. Usually once everything is marshaled, it's a period of 7, 8, 9 weeks and it's finished. So that's really the application in a nutshell. That's the project. I can go into more detail on any of these issues, and again with the RF issue, Peter can go into yet more detail. So with that, maybe I could take a pause and see what questions the board has.
I had a question, and based on your presentation, and I didn't catch this in the application. Are you eliminating the equipment on the roof and replacing it onto the pole, or placing it onto the pole?
Good question. I probably went fast on that. What we are going to do is the plan would be to relocate the fire department's whip antenna onto the top of our pole. If you look at the elevation drawings, you'll see our center line of the Verizon 8-foot antennas is at 60 feet. So the top of the antennas and the top of the monopole would be at 64 feet. And then the fire department's whip antenna would, and either that or a replacement antenna would be relocated from the roof of the building onto the pole. The T-Mobile equipment, all of that would have nothing to do with this project. We do show, as you will see from the elevation drawings, a spot on the pole right below the Verizon antenna array for either yet another wireless company, or I suppose if T-Mobile wanted to benefit from a little extra height, it could relocate from the building rooftop to our pole. I don't know if that helps them. We haven't talked to them. What we did show was simply that there is room for another co-locator. It's one of the shortest sites, by the way, in the entire system. There's probably only a handful that are shorter than this one for a macro cell site. So it doesn't lend itself to like 4 or 5 carriers going on it, but certainly it has room for somebody else.
And there's a variance required for this?
Yes. The way the ordinance is written, we need setback variances, and that's called out in the application. But we do need a number of setback variances. In fact, you have to be set back from the parking lot or in the parking lot, so
Right.
Really need a setback variance for that one.
Jay, do you have any questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just as, I have, I think, three questions. As I look at what you were calling Exhibit G, it's Attachment A on mine,
Yes.
it appears that there's a lot of area on here that is in need of coverage.
Right.
So and what you're depicting here is that from the map, only about half that area is benefiting from this particular tower.
Correct.
What plans are you going to put in place to complete
That's
that coverage in that area?
That's a good question, and if I could answer that, if you look further, I think in Exhibit G, no, I'm sorry, I take that back. Let me show you, I'll pass this around to the board. The area that you're talking about, sir, that would not be covered by this site is down here.
Right.
What Peter has just provided is a propagation, the same kind of tool. We have a site that is going to be constructed. It's right where my finger is. You'll see it. It's a little red, three-legged thing. That's what we call our Coolidge site. And on the water tank that you have, an existing water tank with cell sites on it, we have been approved and are building one right there. That will cover that area to the south. And if I can pass that around to you.
So this is new information
Yes,
then?
it is. It is new. Peter, I think, just propagated it, and
Okay.
what he did. That site is not yet operative. What he did was he propagated the Coolidge site, and it's showing the coverage that it will provide. So you see that it actually fills in most of that area down
Right,
there.
okay, good. All right, I was wondering if you were going to go there or to the
Coolidge and
Blair site.
Right.
I think.
Is there a need to put a micro tower someplace in, what do you call it, a bouncer or whatever, like you have, you've got one over on Ridge Road, to do like one or two streets? Is there any need to do any of that?
Peter's saying it not now, and certainly not in the plan.
Okay,
I've been working on this network as a lawyer, for Verizon and its legacy companies this is my 30th anniversary doing it. And I will tell you that it's an evolving, living type project. It gets tinkered with and changed all the time. And so, to your point, if Verizon sees that something isn't working or there's an area uncovered, obviously can't cover everything all at once, and it's taken 30 years to get to where we are now. But Verizon will look at an area and see what it has to do to.
all right.
So,
Right.
to your point, there could be a micro cell somewhere if there was an area that was not covered.
And I also have a question about the height of the tower.
Mm-hmm.
How much higher is the monopole, not the whip antenna?
Mm-hmm. Right.
How much higher is the whip antenna than the top of the building on that?
Good question.
On the west side of the
Yes.
building?
So the building is 31 feet high.
Okay,
So it's basically the center line of Verizon's antennas are twice the height of that building.
Okay,
I think probably the T-Mobile, the top of their antennas go up to 41 feet. Verizon will be, again, the center line will be 60. So the top of the Verizon antennas will be at 64. The top of the pole is at 64. Center line is at 60. The bottom will be at 56.
okay.
And they need, obviously, to get above the T-Mobile antenna so they're not shooting and interfering with each other. And that height is needed to convey the signal as far as it shows going.
Right. And it couldn't be much higher than that anyway because of the fall ratio around.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, that was a constraint.
And what's the additional coverage that the whip antenna gets with the additional height? Do you get additional,
The whip antenna obviously will do nothing for Verizon. It may do something for the fire department.
if, at some point, if you want to? And then, I guess the thing that, when we talked about this at the workshop, there weren't any representatives here about that, but there was some discussion that in the documents that that you had attempted to get the project put, or get the antenna potentially located at the Seabreeze.
Originally.
Yeah. As I envision that, if that antenna were someplace close to the Jackrabbit, do you gain like 20 feet of height just from the fact that you're down the hill at the fire district? If you were in that area of the park, or?
You know, I haven't been to Seabreeze since my sons were young. So I was kind of fading on I never went on the Jackrabbit.
Well, if you think of it as say the northeast corner of the property.
Northeast corner.
Excuse me, southeast corner.
Of the Seabreeze Amusement Park
Yeah,
property. I think you might.
Like it's substantially higher over in that corner than it would be.
Peter, do you want to? Yeah, thank you.
I understand that it doesn't meet our ranking protocol, that, you know, you want to get on municipal properties and everything, but it's best if you're, it also is good if you're away from neighborhoods, which some parts of that property are more, are a little bit further away from neighborhoods than what the proposed location is.
My name is Peter Franz, Verizon Wireless RF engineer. In that question, if we look at appendix, I forget which one is the G, the part 3, the
All right, G,
candidate
exhibit G.
analysis. There's a couple properties that are slightly further south where at the same height they could provide a similar coverage, but as you go further from the lake, even though you get taller, we can't aim across towards Canada because of the FCC. So as we back away from the lake further, we actually lose some productivity for service. So if we're closer to the lake, we can aim
it the right
east,
way.
south, and west. So
Okay.
it's a prime location.
Is it, while Peter's here, let me just ask him a question. It's also true that the further south you get, the less able you are to cover the lake shore itself.
Correct.
Okay.
And it's the same, I think it's for the same reason, because you can't point it towards.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you. Rich?
Am I correct in understanding that the property where Seabreeze isn't on the table anyway? That there
Correct.
were efforts,
That's
but
right.
Correct.
they were fruitless?
Yes.
Okay. And can you talk a little bit about the benefit to the fire department?
I'll talk just generally, and I'll leave it to the fire department to actually how they feel about it.
Okay.
I look at it this way. First of all, the wireless service is going to be better for everybody, including the fire department. And wireless service, you know, so there's a cliche of, you know, stop and pick up some milk and eggs on your way home, and that's the use of the phone. But, and I'm not going to speak to the this fire department's use of data, but certainly for voice it will help. Any public safety, I'll put it that way, it will help with better coverage and more capacity. But it also, in terms of actually using wireless for the internet and for data downloading, and again, it's not really science fiction or in the future to talk about fire departments downloading building plans of a building they're going to. So there is that generally with fire departments. Again, I'm not going to speak to this one in particular, but that's certainly that kind of use of data, the ability to use data is incredibly enhanced here. There's also,
I guess what I'm really getting at
there's
is
the rent.
That's what I wanted to point out.
I was going to get to that too.
People in the public who haven't had a chance to review these documents, there's a reason there's a preference to places like fire departments.
Well, and there's a reason why that's a subsidiary, the same reason why the town, when it enacted its present ordinance, had that hierarchy. You're not only a landlord if you're the town, you're also getting rent that can be used for public purposes. in the same way the fire department as a quasi-public type of an emergency service provider, its rent isn't the same as if we were paying it to Bill Gray. And again, no offense to Bill Gray, I think that's great, but I understand why you have that in your ordinance. It's to benefit, if you can, entities that are more in the public service.
And I don't expect you, because you're representing a business here, but that amount is an amount that obviously is substantial and helps benefit the fire department quite a bit.
Right. And again, the fire department could talk more about how much it's benefiting them because they know their budget. And but
Okay.
certainly. And I also said, and we didn't do any of the actual radio frequency work, but I would also just, touching this arena for all these years, I would expect that perhaps the fire department's antenna might be a little bit better in terms of its utility on the tower, on the pole, than on the building. So those are three benefits. They may not be great, I can't really tell, but they are benefits, and in a tie, it would certainly break the tie, for sure.
And I know there's somebody here from the fire department, and I'm anxious to hear what their position is. Just back to Exhibit G, the attachments, and I just want to understand the difference between 3 and 4. 3 talks about a 60-foot tower,
Correct.
and 4 talks about a 40-foot tower. You did that simply to show us the benefits of the extra 20 feet in the
Correct.
propagation studies. And the only real benefit is inside the red circled areas, is that correct?
No, actually, and I let me see if I can find it here. If you look at, well, actually, if you look at what I just passed around, you'll see outside the horizontal red circle to the west, you'll see additional coverage outside that circle, outside that ellipse there. Yeah. It's small, but you can see it.
And is there any sort of, I'm all set, any sort of studies or numbers that suggest how many properties or homeowners will be affected, by better service?
Positively? It's going to, it's probably going to be in the hundreds. But
As far as the population goes, we haven't run a study, but should be in the hundreds. And if you look at the geographical area with all the residences below Verizon Wireless adequate levels, it's a pretty large area. So hundreds would not be unreasonable.
Yeah.
Okay.
And also, obviously, in addition to the residences in their houses, or the residents in their houses, we're also looking to cover the mobile traffic as well.
Right.
Yeah. But this will, by the way, the signal strength is designed here, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but the signal strength is in fact designed to actually be a little bit stronger than it would be in an unpopulated area to actually, again, if you read Peter's report, you'll see that you need a higher signal strength to actually penetrate buildings. And you need a higher signal strength to actually penetrate leaves. If you've ever noticed in your own cell phone, coverage is always better in the winter than it is in the summer because the leaves are strong enough to interfere with the propagation. And so you have to have adequate signal strength. This will reach inside the houses.
Okay. And my last question, and we discussed this at the workshop, there was an effort in years past, and I know I've seen it on the Massachusetts Turnpike, efforts to disguise towers.
Mm-hmm.
Why are we getting away from that? What's the engineering reason why we're not seeing those efforts any longer?
We have another site coming to you in Arundecoit, and you will see an exact effort to camouflage a cell tower in an area that seemed more appropriate. Here, it's a public utility type building. It's a short, it really is one of the shortest in the system. I'm not sure that these poles have become so common that that most people don't even see them anymore, really. When I check with people, do you remember that pole we were going to build and you were wondering about it? And I've literally had people say, yeah, when are you going to build it? And I've said, well, it's been up for 4 months. I mean, you've seen it. But sometimes camouflage is helpful. Sometimes it really doesn't seem worth it. And I think in this particular case, being at a fire station, people associate towers with fire stations for sure, or any police station, a town hall. So it didn't seem to be an appropriate case for camouflage. And sometimes the camouflage, go along the Massachusetts Turnpike or the Pennsylvania Turnpike, and sometimes they actually draw attention, and somebody says, oh, there's a fake tree. Does that really help them? So it's really a question of where is it needed, when would it be beneficial, when is it, when's the cost benefit there? And I think in this case, being at a fire department, it seemed this is something that you would associate with that kind of a use.
Okay, great, thank you.
Ray?
Most of my questions have been answered. The only thing I'm concerned, and I'd like to jump in on what Mr. Palukas has said, the fire department is in a residential area. As it relates to camouflage, trees, etc., I'm not sure that I'm in agreement with the thought process that a naked pole, if you will. Granted, when I was younger, we used to drive down the Massachusetts Turnpike as well, and I'm sure Mr. Palukas is far too young to do this, but we had the game board, and you had to look for Netzel. And you could never find
I remember
Netzel.
Edsels.
You remember those game? That
Yeah.
game. But by the same token, if the kids are looking for non-tree at this juncture, that's it doesn't matter to me. I'm looking at the residents and where the fire department is. Certainly, I understand the public utility
Right.
on a quasi-public facility and so forth, but I'm wondering what the residents feel. I guess where I'm going with that. I'd love to hear their opinion.
Right.
Mr. Ritchie and Mr. Palukas have asked all the other questions that I
Okay.
had concerns of that
Thank
we
you.
had at the workshop.
Bernie?
I don't have any questions.
Michael?
Nor do I.
This time, we'll open it up to public input. Anyone wishing to speak in regards to the application may do so at this time. You may address the podium.
Hi, good evening. My name is Dr. Barbara Lakeberg. I'm a doctor of political science, and I just bought a house 3 houses away from the firehouse this summer. So when I moved in to 62 Nixon Drive, I didn't see any fire tower. I didn't see antennas that were large and obtrusive. I didn't see anything that looked like it was going to be projecting radio frequency waves like directly at my house from a short distance, and I really loved the neighborhood that I was looking at. My biggest concern was, did I want to live on a street called Nixon Drive? But I kept looking at the house, and the house is a great house, and it was built about 100 years ago, and it's got a lot of space, a nice yard, wonderful neighbors, and I've been extremely happy living here since the middle of July. And I just found out about a week and a half ago that there's this plan to build a tower, or a potential plan to put the tower on top of the construction next to the firehouse, and my first concern was, is this a safe thing to do, to have houses that are right next door, practically? Right on the other side of the parking lot is Danielle's house, and then there's Fred's house, and then there's my house. And my house is up on an elevation, and so is the house next door to me because of the way the landscape is there. So it's like a hilly street that goes up and drops down and up again. So the firehouse is actually lower than the houses where I am. And I don't know that I'm not directly in the path of whatever's going to be coming off of the antenna. So one concern was the health-related one, and I looked that up, and there really isn't a complete consensus yet as to whether it's safe to be in the path of radio frequency waves coming off towers like this. So if you're on the back side of where they're transmitting, it seems to be no problem at all, but I don't know which way you're planning to point it, and if it's going to be circling around and throwing off radio waves in all directions. I'm not very far away from where they're going to be doing that. So if I'd known that there was a tower like that before I bought the house, I wouldn't have bought that house. I would have picked a different place to live. Another concern is whether there's a generator that's going to be producing noise in the neighborhood, because that neighborhood is extremely quiet. It's beautiful. When you go walking there in the evening after the screaming on the bobsled and all the spinning rides stops in the summertime at 10 o'clock, it's an extremely quiet neighborhood. And it's wonderfully peaceful. It's a beautiful place, like you're living in the countryside, which is what it used to be when Seabreeze was first developed. Another concern is like the visual side that a couple people have brought up. What does it look like, and how will that impact on the environment? Just, a few days ago, I took a walk. My cat goes for walks in his cat carrier, and I took him out for a walk, and I thought the area was so beautiful and the day was lovely. This was Christmas Eve, and it was like 65, 67 degrees. On my phone, I have several pictures that I took, like a 360-degree picture, including the firehouse, and it's a wonderful area. It's beautiful, and I don't know what it'll look like if this tower is poking up there. And then the fourth question I have is, what will this do to the value of the house that I have if I don't want to continue to live there? I have no plan to move right now, but if I decide I'd like to move, I'm not sure how a tower like that or it being so close to the tower would affect the value of my property. So I have some real concerns about this. I'm very sorry to hear that the plan is to build the tower there, because that doesn't seem like the best place to put it. And there are probably other people that would have come to this, but there are people away on vacation. It's not the right week to do a meeting like this either. It's the holiday in between two holidays, and a lot of people are out of town. So probably more people would have come if they'd been able to do it if they were here in town right now. So thank you.
Excuse me,
Wait,
I don't know
there-
if anybody else,
what-
but I can answer questions.
Yeah,
whenever-
afterwards, yeah.
Yeah.
Just so the public knows, you can write in, you can email in, all those other ways are available to express any opinions. Anyone else from the public wishing to speak in regards to this application?
Good evening. Chief Dave DeRoller from the Seabreeze Fire District, and I also represent the association. Address is 31 Philon Avenue. The reason why it's being proposed as a big thing is emergency services, two-way radio communication. The county's in the process of upgrading the current system within the next 2 years. And if you calculate the existing building height along with our current 30-foot whip, if not 35-foot whip, the overall height of this tower is actually, almost be shorter than the current height of our building plus the current radio whip. Just answer a few questions. We have had T-Mobile on the property for close to 2 years now. There is a generator there. So to another point of view, the generator does run when it has to, but obviously it hasn't affected the noise levels within the neighborhood itself. We're in need of the revenue. As you can see, we have the oldest station in Irondequoit. It was built in the early 1900s. It was a converted commercial facility to what it is today. And I can answer any other questions you may have from an emergency services standpoint, but this is a huge plus in terms of radios that we use for vital life-saving communication. We also use Verizon Wireless services in both of our chief's vehicles, as per phones and tablets that carry vital hydrant information, building pre-plans, etc.
Chief, I have a question, if I may. To bring up the doctor's point about generators.
Correct.
I know that they come on when necessary. Are you familiar, do you know when or how often that may be, or?
I have never heard the T-Mobile generator operate. It's for a backup purpose only. It is if the power goes out from RG&E.
Just curious. So
Where
you-
we
so it's
typically
never
do
really-
not, unless it's a huge storm, we do not have a large outage down there. It's pretty reliable.
They don't weekly go on as a test?
I'm sorry?
It doesn't go on weekly with
I
a
have never heard it,
test mode?
Chairman. Never heard it.
Okay.
Chief, being in the business you're in, is it fair to say that in that neighborhood, a lot of private residences now have, I shouldn't say a lot, but some have generators at their own residences? I know in my neighborhood, when the power goes out, the sound level goes up for me.
Well, definitely. There's commercial businesses, very large ones, that have large generators to power them if need be.
And also private residences
Correct.
as well.
We do not have one. We're in the process of putting one in with all the improvements. As for the safety aspect, it's a breakaway tower. So if the tower somehow collapses, it snaps at that 30-foot level, which will not even reach the edge of our parking lot on the south, east, and southwest and east sides The only people that would possibly be affected is one street to the north. So, and keep in mind, the building itself, coming from the traveling north on Culver Road, traveling south on Culver Road, the building is shielding 35 feet of this tower. And like I said, it's going to be the same height as the current antenna whip we use for radio communication. So I don't see an eyesore being a very large issue here. I have not received one complaint from a resident regarding the T-Mobile antennas that have been put up there. And I don't see an issue moving forward with the current configuration.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt
it's
you.
okay.
I thought you were pausing to complete. Do we have any other questions of the chief?
I'm just curious, Chief, from what you know, how will this improve radio communications for the department itself as with the difference in?
Well, currently we do have dead spots in quite a few areas within the district with the current radio system. I can't give you a percentage of an enhancement, but anything is above what we could operate at now. That miscommunication may cause an issue at an emergency scene, however serious it may be. But with the enhancement of a new tower, a new whip for the radios, and a new countywide system, we're definitely going to be well above what we are now.
You're comfortable that it would be could we say a significant enhancement?
Definitely. And please keep in mind, I've lived in the community since I was born in '79. I do a lot for the community. This is just not a financial gain for the association. I am concerned about what the residents feel, but from an emergency services standpoint, it's a huge plus for us to move forward with it.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
I'm sorry, Chief, I had one other question. Just so that I'm clear, are you expecting that the revenue associated with this is going to be used to decrease the taxes?
Well, what you need to understand is there's two entities here. There's a Volunteer Firemen's Association, which owns the building and provides some funding for the district. The district is a taxing entity. The district is the one that levies the taxes to provide services to the residents, pay for equipment. The association supplements on ambulance services and supplies in that manner. But the revenue from this is basically to pay for RG&E, telephone, garbage, and building improvements to a nearly 110-year-old building at this point.
I'm not. I used to be a lot more familiar with how the revenue flowed with this than I am now. It used to actually be part of the town budget, and now it's a separate entity. Correct?
Yes, but that entity has nothing to do with this project. There's two entities that incorporate the services we provide here down there. It's very complicated, and there is another agency within the town that operates the same way. But
so how the costs associated with what this particular project's going to offset, how are those costs paid now? Are those costs paid through?
If you no, they're not. If you look at and within your Roundacoy Post, you'll see different fundraising events such as our turkey raffle we run every year, our Harley raffle we run every year, our Christmas parade we put on for the community, our fund drive. All of that is used to keep the lights on in the structure, to do building improvements, for communications, whether it be telephone data, garbage removal, and stuff like that.
All right.
As for the taxing entity, like I said, the Seabreeze Fire District is a totally different entity. They do not own the structure. We will benefit from the district standpoint with emergency communications on this tower, but we're not involved in the actual project. The association is the building owner.
Thank you.
It's very complicated.
That made it very clear to me, anyway.
Anyone else from the public wishing to speak in regards to this application may do so?
Can I just ask if the health question wasn't addressed?
I'm going to address that. I didn't get a chance to.
Seeing none, I'll close the public input portion.
Can I respond?
Yeah, now it's your turn to
Okay,
respond.
gotcha, thank you. First about the generator. As the chief said, generators come on during emergencies, when there's power outages, when there's storms. Most of us, I'm sure, lived through the 91 ice storm. We were without power for 10 days in my house in the city. Many of my neighbors, we haven't, but now have their own generators, and some did back then, as a matter of fact. And we benefited from the generosity of some of our neighbors. But so, as a point here, the generators are useful in emergencies. And I think, frankly, if there were an emergency, there'd be a lot more problems than generator noise. The chief said he hasn't ever heard the T-Mobile generator. I can assure him that it's tested on a periodic basis, like all wireless companies' generators and other users, I'm sure. The Verizon one itself would come on for an hour on a weekday morning, 10 o'clock in the morning, for no longer than an hour. That's how they're tested. And it's a pretty innocuous use. We're in, by the way, many residential areas and have never had a complaint about any generator that has ever at least come to my attention. And most problems do come to my attention with Verizon in this area. Regarding the concern that Dr. Lakeberg, I'm sorry, my ears there, okay, had raised. There's a few things to say about that. Probably the most legal answer to that is the federal government in the Telecommunications Act of 1996 took that issue away from people to worry about or to even complain in a legal sense about, so long as the wireless entity complied with the FCC requirements in terms of levels of output. And if you look at Exhibit K, you'll see a report from Millennium Engineering, which is an outside entity which actually does these kinds of measurements. It's showing that, from a legal point of view, that Verizon is complying with the federal Telecommunications Act. So that issue, again, from a legal point of view, is really not an issue that anyone can take up. But beyond that, and just a couple things. I actually worked on this long before the federal government came out with its regulations and its thresholds and ceilings of wireless output. And there were many entities, national and international, that actually studied the issue. And that actually was what led to the federal government promulgating its regulations, because it was seen that although you could never prove a negative, we can never prove that water won't kill you or an apple won't kill you, can't prove that. It was sufficient proof such that the federal government actually acted on it. Beyond that, I will also say we're on hospitals, nursing homes, senior living facilities, daycare centers. These installations are on any kind of structure you can conceive, including structures that would impact, if there were an impact, say the most vulnerable of our population, elderly, disabled, sick, or children. So, and as I said, I've worked on many of these, probably over 1,000 now. And we've been tested very carefully before, during, and since the federal regulations. But I think it's fair to say that most everybody is not concerned about these types of facilities. And just one final thing to say about that, that if you were ever going to be concerned about wireless broadcasts, you'd do much better living near a tower than you would having a cell phone. If you were ever concerned about it, you wouldn't have a cell phone, because the output from these towers is much less than what we would get just simply having a conversation, using them, including Bluetooth and things like that.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
That's okay. So, again, can we ever prove a negative? No. Western philosophy and education tells us that we can't prove a negative, but this one, as much as we can say anything is proved, has been proven. Regarding the visual and property values, I mean, I think we've talked about visual. Again, property values, we've done many reports in the past, or actually commissioned reports, and have never seen any issue with property values. And in fact, increasingly, you have the opposite problem. If people aren't near wireless service, that would tend to depress the value of a house because it becomes less desirable for people who want to be connected to modern telecommunications. So, any further questions or?
That's probably true, more true than anything nowadays, because
Yeah.
people want to be connected wirelessly.
Right, we've seen that in a lot of
Negativity
places.
associated with connectivity is probably more, lack of connectivity is probably more prevalent.
It has changed a lot over the last 30 years.
Right.
In that respect.
Final quick question, or not?
No.
About the distance of what the regulation says you're allowed. I thought there was like a 300-foot minimum that they should be
No.
before they hit a house.
No regulations in this country to that effect. In fact, the only thing that I can think of that you might be referring to is there's a federal bulletin where you cannot be too low. They want you up higher. And there are OSHA standards as well as, because people work in and around these facilities as well. But there's nothing that says you have to be 300 feet from anything at all.
All right. I think at this point, are we ready to make a secret determination?
Do we have the form?
Yes, I can review that if you like. Thank you.
I guess I had one more question, Mr. Chairman. We're all okay with the enclosure around with the
I was, I don't know if no one else
I
made.
didn't think it was. I
didn't hear you, Jay.
Didn't hear you.
Oh, wondering about the enclosure around the chain link fenced
We
enclosure.
did talk about that.
What's that?
We did talk about that.
Okay, well, that's right.
No, and I recall that we felt comfortable with that. We weren't talking barbed wire or anything else like
No.
that. We're talking
No.
That's
chain
it.
link.
Would be a trade-off. Sometimes we would have a shorter fence with barbed wire on top, but in areas like Arundequoit and in the city, we try to have a higher fence and eliminate the barbed wire. Out in rural areas or less populated areas, we might have barbed wire, but
Did we talk about a cleanup of the area?
Jay talked about a cleanup of the area or something.
Didn't we talk
Yeah,
about?
that's got to be part of the C of O when they get before they can get a C of O, the area's got to be cleaned up, but that's all.
Okay.
I didn't
We
need to
should
bring it up
remind the
today.
fire department of that.
They will be.
Okay.
Let's review the seeker application or assessment, excuse me. So in part two, the assessment, the town staff has helped us take a look at this, and there are 11 items that we address, and I think in general, well, not in general, in specific, there's nothing that we find a moderate to large impact that may occur. Everything is no or small impact, including the items for action create a material conflict with any adopted land use, proposed action result in the change of the intensity of the land use, will the proposed action impair the character or quality of the existing community, and on to those standard 11 items. I think part three, the project includes the construction of a 64-foot telecommunications tower and associated ground equipment and antenna facilities on the property owned by Seabreeze Fire District in the C Business District. This is an unlisted action. The proposed telecommunications tower proposed by Verizon Wireless is located next to an existing multi-story fire station. Given the existing development on site, this project will not create an adverse impact associated with traffic land, air, water, or other natural features. Although the project will include a construction of a tower, the height of existing buildings, including the adjacent fire station, minimizes any impacts to community character. Given the minimal impact to no adverse impacts, a negative declaration is recommended. That's our preliminary findings. Does anyone see any amendments or modifications? If not, I'm looking for motions.
Mr. Chairman, on, with respect to SECR on PZ, this is PZB 1512-1. With respect to SECR, I would say this is unlisted action, and I move negative declaration.
I'll second that.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. We have one absent. All right, now we're looking for preliminary and final site plan approval. Of course, we all acknowledge that a variance is still perhaps going to be issued for this project, but and necessary, so.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move approval under PZB 1512-1 upon the matter of request by Nixon Peabody LLP, acting as agent for Seabreeze Volunteer Fire Association for preliminary and final site plan approval to construct and operate a self-supporting cell tower, lighting rod, and whip antenna on an equipment platform with site-related improvements on premises 4657 Culver Road in the C Business District, pending any pertinent zoning approvals. I would move approval.
Is it necessary to stipulate that?
Second.
The attorney's advising that we have a stipulation that the ZBA grant approval.
Did what? I'm sorry?
The zoning board of appeals grant approval.
That they your site plan approval is conditioned on the ZBI granting their approval for the variances.
That's what I thought I said, pertinent to any approval that they might have.
Condition, sorry.
Or condition, excuse me, I'm sorry. Condition, okay.
Right.
That's,
Just to clarify that. Who is seconded? I missed it.
I did.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Thank you for investing in Arundecoit.
Thank you.
Michelle, if you'd introduce the next case, please.
Mr. Chairman, do we have to lift this from the table?
We have to lift this from the table, yes.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to lift PB 1511-4 from the table
Do you need a
for
second?
consideration. Yeah, you do. We've always done that in the past.
Anyone want a second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Next item on the agenda is case number PB 1511-4. Request by Susan Oshman for preliminary final site plan and signage approval to operate a boat-related business with site-related improvements on premises tax ID 047.18-2-3.2, located south of 100 Joy Lane in the RH River Harbor District.
Happy holiday.
I'm Susan
Hello.
Ashman, as you know.
Maybe you could just review some of the changes and the updates just quickly.
Changes in the updates, changes that you were asking for a more
Yeah,
detailed.
before, and just, maybe just
A
give
month
it,
ago, the changes.
Right. I believe you all got a copy of the new site plan that's stamped. In fact, mine isn't, but
yep.
stamped showing exactly what the hardscape's going to be on it, the items that you requested, what the materials are going to be, the proposed shed, what the materials are on that, where the propane tank was going to be located. All of that is now on this map.
Want to show us the colors while you have them there?
Sure.
proposal is the building would be a gray with a blue accent color?
Yeah, the blue goes around the top. It varies in height depending on the roof height.
Thank you.
At this point, we've seen this application for quite a while, and we really appreciate all the amendments, modification, input you've taken, and, but I want to open it up to the board if there's any additional questions. Jay?
This is exactly what I needed. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Rich?
I don't have any questions. I just want to reiterate what Jay said. This gives us a much better idea of not only what she plans to do, but what it's supposed to look like when it's done, and everybody can be assured that it will look like what you want it to look like and we expect it to look like. So,
Okay.
thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Ray?
I couldn't begin to thank you enough. You know, at this, really, the consternation that you went through with your landlord and the lack of information that you had, you could have moved your business out of Arundequite.
I could have.
And I'm so glad you decided to keep it in Arundequite, and tells us a lot that you embrace us and the community, et cetera, and I just thank you a lot for what you've done and the
Well, thank
amount
you.
of effort you put in. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bernie?
I just echo the thank yous.
Michael?
Well, I'd like to say that after tonight, you will have passed the course on how to prepare for a presentation to this board after many hurdles.
Yes.
You can teach it.
What a
There
learning.
you go. I think I could.
Did we already open and close this? Does anyone recall the public input? So there's no public input necessary
Right.
again at this point. So we're looking at the seeker portion. Again, we find that there are no or small impact to the 11 key items in Part 2. To summate Part 3, the action is a site plan approval of proposed, the action is the site plan approval for a proposed marine-related business, Susie's Boutique, which includes the use of pre-manufactured structure, improved gravel lot for use as parking and outdoor workspace needed for boat detailing services provided on site, and associated signage, unlisted action. The project site is located on property owned and operated by Voyager Marine. Portions of the site have been previously developed and have been used to store boats and other marine-related equipment. The proposed development will result in improvements to the existing gravel parking areas, which are not currently in good condition. Although not located in environmentally protected overlay district, the project site is located within close proximity to the Genesee River, which makes stormwater management an area of concern. The proposed gravel will allow stormwater to permeate the ground, thereby minimizing potential adverse impacts to the nearby waterway. This area of the town, like many parcels in Arundequite, is identified as archaeologically sensitive. However, since the project does not require any grading or ground disturbance, and since the site has been previously disturbed, there are no adverse impacts related to this issue. The proposed development fits within the character of existing buildings located on or near the marine facilities. So at this point, I'm looking for motions regards to the seeker.
I would make a motion that PB 1511-4 be considered an unlisted action, negative declaration.
Second?
Thank you, Ray. And Rich? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move
Oh,
approval. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I wanted to ask one more time about the signage. I wanted to just amend the final item so that if in the future you want to put a sign up and you never want to see us again, that, which I can understand, that it can be done administratively. And so I just wanted to add that if that's, with the signage that we had talked about to put it out front, there really isn't really any reason, except that there is a reason with respect to the River Harbor District that you have to come before the board. You've already come before the board for other reasons, and I just think that it would, if it's reasonable, go through the, you can get the approval administratively through the chairman.
I don't know,
Yeah.
I don't know that we.
Yeah, so this board can't, anticipate, so the options are, there's an actual sign before you that you can approve. If there's not a sign before you right now, then the code would govern. So there are certain signs under the code that can be approved administratively. There are others that have to come before this board, and this board can't say without an application before it that, you know, whatever future sign she wants can be dealt with administratively,
All right.
because you can't
Okay.
Can't over-
You said that much better than I was going to.
can't
I was
overpower
just
the
gonna say
code
no.
provisions.
Okay. I figured I'd give it a shot, but if you're saying that I can't, then,
No, we cannot rewrite the town code.
But you just said that there's certain,
there are certain signs now that can be done administratively.
Right.
So if and when in the future you propose a sign, you would deal with the town staff like you did with this application, and Carrie and the rest of the folks at the town could let you know, yes, this is a sign that can be done administratively, or you meet, you know, certain thresholds within the code that require you to go to the planning board. So
Okay.
depending on what design you come forward with in the future.
then to say,
You
can we
just,
say what are the certain
A-
ones that
absolutely.
can be done administratively?
yes.
Yes, the sign requirement, sign code varies by district. So what needs, planning board approval and what doesn't varies from district to district.
And type, right, as
And
well.
type as well, correct.
But
So-
we can, before we say, okay, can we have this, you can say, this is what you could have that would fall under the administrative.
Yes.
Skip that whole.
Yes,
You're approved for the sign that's on your building. Any new sign needs to be followed by the regulations, and they'll help you with
Right.
that when
Yeah,
the time
that's fine.
comes.
All right,
Exactly.
good. All right,
So-
go ahead. So,
Mr. Chairman, I move approval for case number PB 1511-4, a request by Susan Oshman for preliminary and final site plan and signage approval to operate a boat-related business with site-related improvements on premises tax ID 047.18-2-3.2, located south of 100 Joy Lane in a River Harbor district. I move approval.
Thank you, Ray.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Bernie. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Thank you for investing in Arundecoit.
Thank you.
Happy holiday. Good luck.
Thank you.
All right, we have some meeting minutes to approve.
And I just wanted to clarify from the workshop, we had a discrepancy on the public input part. Jay?
yes.
And I went back to the tape, and it did say she is just lightness.
Okay. Given that, I'll move approval of the minutes from November 23rd, 2015.
I would second the motion.
Do that. Yeah, boy. Go.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Tonight
For what? Oh, never mind.
is Ray McDonald's last night on our board, and I'd just like to take a moment to thank Ray for his service to the town, to our board. His term expired.
That's correct.
Does he not reapply?
Thank you. I don't know. I just
Ray,
know this
thank
is
you very
last-
much.
Yes.
It's been
You're
great
welcome.
working with you.
Very nice.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate your great group. Thank
Don't
you.
be a stranger. You can always welcome to be an audience member.
And a commentator?
A color man out in the audience. But
Yeah, I'll have
thank you very much, Ray, for everything you've done for the board and for the town. And we wish you nothing but the best of luck.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate serving with you. Been a pleasure.
Thank you, Mr. Mack.
Maybe you'd like to close us out by making a motion to adjourn.
I'd like to do that. Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Oh, second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you.